Absolutely. I love it, man. And I love the approach, right, of monitoring as well. And I think it's like when you're able to witness, we all know the feeling, right? We know that our nervous system, our breathing is dysregulated when we respond with anger. And it's just putting it all into practice. And it's some sort of way that the brain can wrap its head around. You mentioned intuition a few times. It's one of your specialties, kind of following your intuition. How does that show up in your life? And how can someone get more connected with their intuition, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean that also is a packed word when you say intuition. You know, if I said it to my mom, she thinks it's the devil. But if I say it to someone else, they're like, "Oh yeah, my gut instincts, the way I feel intuitively in my body about something." And a lot of entrepreneurs, like many famous entrepreneurs, talk about intuition and how they trusted their gut before making some of the biggest decisions of their life. And so I think intuition is really just me honoring my body because I'm living in my head most of my life, so my intuition is like this connection to my body. It's connection to my my physical heart, my body. You know, we have adrenal glands, we have all these things that produce serotonin, not just our brain. So we have these other parts of the body that also are systems and endocrine glands that are connected to this other nervous system that the gut has and the heart has. And so to me, intuition, if we're just talking like quote unquote physical body science, like that's what it is, endocrine system and the heart. But the reality is, intuition is like why you make certain decisions and you can't explain it every time because it's like, whoa, that was like, some might call it uh out of the blue experience or a synchronicity. And some might even call it a God shot or God wink, whatever you want to call it based on what you've learned to call it. To me, intuition is happening every moment of every day because when I really open my eyes to new awareness, I start to see things I never could see before. So the intuition is me kind of getting out of my head and allowing it to just like, oh, what's going on here in my body? Intuition is, to me, it's connected to the heart brain coherence
Mm.
as well.
I love it, and I think one of my favorite thought leaders is John Vervaeke. For the listeners, if you haven't checked out "Awakening from the Meaning Crisis," he has some really good stuff on intuition that I would encourage people to check out. He's a professor at the University of Toronto, and I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about is this flow state, right? Like
Mhm.
really, like leaning in, listening, not just with your ears, not just to the voice inside your head, but like listening with your entire body, and then asking like, what does this moment need from me, and then responding, right? Responding accordingly. um, Whether that's your intuition, your conscience, divine intervention, however you want to call it. I think that's beautiful. um, Walk me through, like, one of the things you mentioned is like resilience. You even have a book about breaking through your comfort zone using the power of cold therapy. I wonder to what extent those are related, but you seem to be a master of resilience and somebody who's overcome a lot in your life, and then now actively seek situations where you can practice resilience. How does resilience show up for you, and why is it so important? And then how can someone develop resilience as well?
Yeah, I mean, resilience, I think, is in many ways the cornerstone of people who come through mental health and addiction recovery challenges. I think
Mm-hmm.
resilience is a strength that you'll see the most in people that come through that. And it's not just addiction recovery mental health. It's so many other things. It's the stigma, it's the racism and prejudice and the challenges that people face that I don't face because of the color of my skin, but they face it. So it's the resilience of really rising up from all of these challenges that happen to you and using the resilience to be a catalyst for change for yourself and then service to others. And resilience to me, when I'm out of my comfort zone, that's where all of my growth lies for the most part. Yeah, sometimes I can be in a yin state and I'm in this like, calming state. But for the most part, where my biggest growth comes is when I'm in this fiery, masculine, out of my comfort zone state and I'm in the unknown. And that takes resilience when I'm in that place. And resilience isn't just like this masculine energy. Resilience is also your intuition. You can resilient heart and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big part of heart mass work too, is talking about the resilient heart. And that is using your non-local intuition to make decisions, even in businesses. And so they talk about that. And so I think resilience is just a really big part of like how I got to where I was, and some of it was done with rigidity. And so that's what I'm healing as I get older, is like getting so much out of the rigidity of that resilience and stepping into the balance, a more of a balance where, yeah, I love to do cold plunges. I love cold showers. I love to get out of my comfort zone and do all these things. And it's because I have the evidence that by doing that, there's so much incredible growth on the other side. It's undeniable. And so now I just know, like, oh, okay, I'm in a comfort zone right now. Let me just, let me also appreciate my feelings of whatever I'm appreciating, and or grief or anything that but also I'm going to eventually be taking some action, and that action could be me reaching out to a friend asking for help, which is out of my comfort zone. That takes resilience. So
Mm.
resilience to me is just a really powerful strength that is both masculine and feminine.
And I think about the listener who's listening right now who maybe is struggling with addiction, right? Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's porn, maybe it's just their phone, maybe it's, distraction, maybe it's whatever. Um, I can almost guarantee there's someone listening who's struggling with addiction. Um, and we talk about resilience. What would the message be to this person who is starting to become aware that they have a problem, but maybe just doesn't necessarily feel like they have the place to start, or they feel like they have you know they have the strength to overcome the addiction, whether it's related to resilience or something else? Like, what would you recommend to them as like a starting place for them?
Yeah, and so like I mentioned earlier, like addiction really exists on a spectrum, right? You might have someone who's sitting homeless who has got a needle in their arm, and where do they go from there? What resources and supports would they do?
Hmm.
And someone might say, "Well, that's not me." Well, that is some. And there's also the person who is in their job, 9 to 5. They know that they could make at least half their income by starting that business and really getting out there and living their purpose. Maybe it is even to serve people in addiction recovery. Maybe even it's that
Hmm.
coincidence, but they're not doing it because they're still stuck in the shame spiral. They're stuck in the shame spiral of addiction. And they don't want to come out and say anything because they know that that perception of them is going to be stigmatized, and and they're also not going to be able to really trust that they're going to get the support they need, because what models exist in our culture today, that when you come out and ask for help, you're embraced with a warm hug and you're going to get all the support you need. That's not what happens.
Hmm.
Now it can happen, does not happen very often, especially for the person suffering silently, which is many people who could be listening,
Hmm.
that they're suffering silently, and it might not even be addiction. It could be some type of obsessive behavior that you cannot figure out how to get through with all the podcasts you've listened to and all the books you've read. And so, what I would say is like the first step is just being like, okay, this is what's happening, and just admit it, that this is what's happening to me. I am Maybe I am addicted. Maybe this is something that I and then you look back like, I've been doing this 7 years. Yeah, this is something I need to look at. And then the next step is, who can I reach out to that can help me, that has already gone where I've been, or already gone where I want to go, and what did they do? And then that's why more people talking about this, and I'm so grateful that you brought me on. The more
Hmm.
people that talk about their story, do you know how many people I've coached that are have millions of dollars, that are deep into addictions in different places in their life, and they'll never come out and talk about this. They'll never
Hmm.
share about it. They'll never go to Alcoholics Anonymous or these meetings, but they get the help they need. And this is what I'm saying, is like there's help available. And
Hmm.
so whether that's like finding an author that you can connect to, or finding a movement studio that you can get into your body, or you can start to get outside and do some earthing, connect to these feelings that are coming up, the answers will come. And in my belief, they will come intuitively, sometimes through synchronicities.
Hmm.
And so I would say that, getting out of your comfort zone, being resilient, and just allowing yourself to be honest is kind of the first step. And then guess what will happen? When you get honest, guess what's going to happen? The door is going to appear, and you're going to have to take the action to walk through it, because someone's going to come into your life to give you an opportunity to change it. And it might be really uncomfortable, but at the same time, that's your opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And again, if you're listening, just have the courage to reach out, right? Whether that's to Jesse, myself, somebody else, you need to reach out to somebody if you really feel like you need that support. Um, Jesse, you're an author of two books. Most recently, if not you, then who? And I believe the other one is How to Smash Your Comfort Zone Using Cold Showers. I'm curious, with if not you, then who? What's the primary sort of message there, and what were you looking to accomplish in authoring this book? It's no small feat to become an author. It's one of those dreams I have someday, but I haven't taken the time to do because I know it's like it's hard, right? To really get your thoughts out there and to publish something for many reasons. But like, why take the time to write this book, and what were you really looking to accomplish, and what's the main message of this book?
Yeah, so this book is, I do believe every person has a book inside of them. I do subscribe
Hmm.
to that belief. And I had a book in me to write, and it was this book. There
Hmm.
was this. There was this story that I would tell, especially at 22 being arrested. And I would share these, and people would be like, man, I'd really like to hear that whole story because I think it could help my brother, my uncle, my aunt, someone I know. And so I had it in me for many years to tell that part of the story. But I didn't have the second half of the story yet, which was the toolkit people could use to get out of those situations. And that took my
Hmm.
whole second half to, like I said, ask for help, get mentors, get coaches. And and that's how the second half of the book really get written. The first half of the book is my story. It's just told most authentically as I can, all of it, the arrests, the traumas, all of it.
Hmm.
And then the whole second half of the book is a toolkit. The whole second half, not one chapter, the whole second half is
Hmm.
all these tools I learned from my mentors that were in the recovery space and not in the recovery space. A lot of the toolkit is for entrepreneurs, it's for people who are entrepreneurs, it's for anyone. And that's why when people read my book who are quote unquote don't have addiction, which I believe everyone does, they go, whoa, this really helped me. I was actually surprised. And I'm like, why were you surprised? And that's kind of like my dialogue. It's like,
Hmm.
it's universal. This is universal. And the principles and the toolkit I have, many of it is universal. And so the book is really just the book I had in me to write. And then my friend, Dr. Danny Friedland, rest in peace, he
Hmm.
came into my life at a moment right before he was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And he said to me, what can I do to help you? And I said, to be honest, I've been putting off a book for like 3 years. And he put me in contact with a close friend, Amanda Rooker, and her company. And I coached with her. And we wrote it in 10 months. The pandemic hit, and I wrote the book in 10 months during COVID with this person with for accountability.
Hmm.
And I wrote the best possible book I could write at the time. Now who knows what the next one will be? It is definitely being written right now. But
Hmm.
this book is like, if not you, then who? No one's coming to save you. It's you. You have to go out and open the door. You have to go out and ask for help. It's you. And so you have to be the one to come up with new solutions for the pandemic, for the epidemic of addiction, for all of it. It's you. And that's kind of the point of my book. No one's, and that's what I realized. I was waiting for others to like come and help people and solve the fentanyl crisis. And it's like, oh my God, no, it's literally me. Like I have to be entrepreneurial about this. And that's
Hmm.
kind of the second half of the book is about
Hmm.
that.
That's amazing, and what a great message, right? If not you, then who? And no one's coming to save you. And how often are we just, you know, I think especially these days, kind of stuck in this perpetual adolescence, as a society, where you know there's just a bunch of 35-year-old 15-year-olds, getting out there, 45-year-old 15-year-olds or 55 15-year-olds, and we just never grew up, right? And it's like we have to, if we want to make any sort of change in the world, which obviously, if you're listening to this show, you have that sort of drive in you. And if you're on this show, Jesse, you have that drive in you. We have to be the ones who step up. So thank you for that. Walk me through, some of the work that it's kind of a cool story of how we met, right? Because we had an opportunity to interact, fairly briefly. It's like a weekend event with John Berghoff, and I remember having a great time and learning so much. I know you're integrally, kind of connected with him in that community. Um, and also, I remember you just getting started at that moment, and I was like, "This guy's got something." Like, I really like him. I'm rooting for him. And then to watch you over the last several years, take ideas and turn them into businesses, take ideas and turn them into success stories has been really cool to watch. And also, I don't even know half the story. So fill me in on like, yeah, like what are some of the successes that you've experienced? I know you work with eye care. I know you work with the state of Georgia. Obviously you're a published author. So like talk to us about entrepreneurship and how this all, you kind of bridge the gap into that.
Yeah, so you definitely met me at a time in the early part of the journey where I had just
Mm,
left my job and I was trying to figure things out. And you know, the name of my business is Entrepreneurs in Recovery. So
mm,
like when people hear that word recovery, I think in the beginning they were kind of like, "Well, I'm not in recovery." But now as they get to know me, they're like, "Oh, damn, I am in recovery. I'm in recovery from workaholism. I'm in recovery from just being stuck in perfectionism." And so that company name that I chose, it's becoming more fitting as time comes on. But
mm,
when you met me, I was still trying to figure things out, and I was doing a lot of work directly at sober living homes and addiction treatment centers and mental health centers and drug courts. And that turned out to be fruitful because that laid a foundation with an audience that really was suffering, and if to be able to bring it to that audience first and then eventually get to businesses and whole systems, it was really, really fruitful to be able to meet
mm,
and create psychological safety for all groups, whether it was someone just starting out or someone who is a C-level exec or an entrepreneur. So that journey, which you mentioned, John Berghoff and his company Exchange, I learned the fundamentals that I needed to be an effective guide and facilitator through what I learned through Exchange to be able to take my own content and deliver it way more effectively with managing energy in a room, by learning these principles. And so I really got to put that into effect right before COVID hit with the state of Georgia when
mm,
they asked me to come in to work with their RCO network, which is a recovery community organization network, which covers the state of Georgia and the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. And I got to come in and facilitate an event with the whole state. And then they asked me to come in before COVID hit and work with them in like 12 live events, to bring their whole system through
mm,
system level change. Let's talk about our vision. Let's talk about our mission. Let's talk about our
mm.
goals and how we can unify. They brought me in to do that work, and COVID hit. So I had to do the whole thing online through Zoom, and it worked
Nice.
fantastic, which created a whole new business for me. And so it was really a blessing in disguise. So that work has turned into me working with now, you know, um, very large companies, larger systems of, let's say, like drug courts, larger drug
Mm,
courts, opportunities, so government contracts, and then eye care. And eye care is the International Center for Addiction Recovery Education. What does that mean? They work with companies. I designed a training called Certified Facilitator in Addiction Awareness, which is for companies.
mm,
So these are facilitators that I'm training that go into companies and they present lunch and learns and awareness of addiction and recovery so that they're not just relying on employee assistance programs. They know exactly where they can go outside of those networks. And so it's really rewarding work. And so working with these different entities has been really fruitful. The work that iCare is doing, my model for addiction recovery, my vision for addiction recovery in the future is every single individual on this, well, in the United States first, will be able to have a recovery coach if they want it covered by insurance. And they are really pioneering this model that could be happening next year. So
mm.
I'm really excited to be involved in that and to fulfill that mission.
That's so huge, man. And I mean, that's when we think about having a recovery coach available, right, covered by insurance. I mean, versus the existing model, wait till someone screws up royally and then give them a court assigned therapist and tell them to go to a free 12-step program. Um, Nothing against a 12-step program or therapy, but this just feels like, a very, definitely a big step in the right direction. And it also feels like, um, it's a proactive model, right? So when we think about like how many people actually need this who aren't getting it because they don't, the pride, of course, right, the ego, but also just because they don't know where to turn, right? And so I mean, why take this mission on, and try to play that big? What's this really about for you, and what's the mission behind it all?
Well, it comes back to if not you, then who, right, Andrew? I mean,
Hmm.
that's what it is. It's like I want this for societal benefit. I
Mhm.
want the opioid epidemic, which is caused by a number of reasons I won't even get into, but I want to help to curb the pain. There's so much pain and suffering. And by bringing on someone who has never had a coach before, to be able to have a recovery coach that's professionally trained, and many of them are in recovery. There's millions of people in recovery. So
Mhm.
they can be trained as someone who has the experience of recovery and be trained in the methodology and the ICF certification to be really legitimate and come out and teach people to have goals and stay accountable to the goals. I mean, that's very different than therapy. That's very
Mm.
different than the models we have. So I personally had a coach since 2015, and I have coached many people in and out of, chronic addiction. And to think that that is possible, which it is and could happen by next year, is
Mm.
beyond bliss for me because I've been in this space for 17 years in my whole life because my family has been devastated by addiction. So it's really my whole life's journey to see that every person gets an addiction recovery coach who's professionally trained, just like when you have diabetes, you can get a coach, and to have that same model for addiction, it just makes logical sense. And
Mm.
to see what it's done for my life, I'm like, I meet gentlemen and women all the time who come to me and they say, "What can I do to get started?" What and I'm like, I can give them the puzzle pieces. Who's going to keep them accountable? I can't coach all these people, and we can
Right.
easily scale this quickly. So, it's an entrepreneurial endeavor and it's a big purpose driven mission and it's
Mm.
happening.